The great battle between the Tuatha De Danann and the monstrous Fomorians was about to begin. The tribe of the goddess Danu had divine items on their side. Goibniu was an extraordinary blacksmith, able to repair anything made of metal to perfection. Lugh was a superb carpenter, quickly repairing any broken shield and spear. But the healer Dian Kekt was the decisive element, able to mend any wound or illness and even resurrect the dead, provided the victim had not lost his head. Morrigan united with the powerful Dagda, just as she had done with Nuada in the great battle against the Firbolgs. With this, the goddess granted the robust warrior even more strength and courage to face any enemy. Feeling strengthened by the goddess of death and war, Dagda claimed that he alone had managed to slaughter a third of the Firbolg enemies. Lugh, as war chief, discussed with the other warriors the last details before the conflict. They were aware of the danger posed by the enemies, but felt that fate would favor the sons of the goddess Danu. The two armies met on the plain where years ago they had fought against the Firbolgs for the right to live on the Green Island. The Fomorian army, led by Baelor of the Terrible Eye, was very powerful. The warriors coming from the underwater caves uttered intimidating war cries. The second battle of Moiktura was about to begin. The great battle started, and the two armies caused a huge bloodbath. The Tuatha De Danann fought with great bravery, while the Fomorians showed frightening verve. The warriors of the two factions battled it out. Many sons of Danu and Fomorians shed blood and dyed the green meadow with shades of red. Balor watched the carnage with pleasure, feeling that his warriors seemed to be defeating the god's offspring. Each fallen Fomorian took 2 enemy warriors with him. The first day of battle was over, and the outcome of the fighting was inconclusive. Many warriors of the Tuatha De Danann had perished. The next day promised to be even bloodier. On the second day of fighting, Dagda led the vanguard of the god's army. To Balor's disbelief, the contingent seemed undamaged even after he had seen many men die the day before. The weapons and shields were spotless, as if they had never been used. Balor was furious and ordered his army to attack at full strength, using all the warriors in reserve. It was another day of fierce fighting. As before, the Fomorians seemed to have slaughtered more enemies. But at night, the healer Dian Kekt treated all the warriors' serious injuries and revived the fallen to fight again. The next day, Lugh led the troops, now superior in number, considering that virtually all the fighters had been rallied. Meanwhile, the Fomorians were fewer and fewer. On this day, the Tuatha De Danann seemed to have gotten the better of the Fomorians. The tide of war seemed to be tilting towards Danu's sons. But Brees, the deposed king of the Tuatha De Danann, told Baelor how his enemies managed to reappear unharmed to fight the next day. Together, they hatched a plan to sabotage the enemy's actions. During the night, the Fomorians made a surprise attack against the miraculous fountain used by Dian Kekt to raise the dead. The Fomorians clogged the spring with huge rocks, blocking the flow of the blessed water. Radan, son of Brace, sneaked into Goibniu's forge and stabbed the blacksmith god in the back. As Radan tried to escape from the forge, he heard Goibniu. Even though he had been brutally wounded, he shouted at him to stop in his tracks, for he had forgotten his knife. And so the blacksmith killed Breeze's son. However, the Fomorian surprise attack overturned the Tuatha's great advantage. The next day, the Tuatha De Danann were again ready to fight. Even without being able to resurrect the fighters, King Nuada had more warriors than the Fomorians on the battlefield. Seizing this advantage would be decisive for the outcome of the war. The king therefore personally led the men on the front lines. Dagda fought like an angry bear, smashing the enemy's heads in with his powerful club. Nuada broke through the enemy lines, tearing the Fomorians apart with his divine sword. Balor was shocked at the scene. His troops were faltering in the face of an enemy they considered vastly inferior, and the gigantic Cyclops decided to act. Balor advanced against Nuada, and the fate of Ireland seemed about to be decided. Balor was tired of fighting fair and used all his power against the hero. Through his terrible eye, Balor launched a powerful lightning bolt at Nuada, who did nothing to defend himself in the face of that power. Lugh rushed to Nuada's aid, but the noble king of the Tuatha De Danann was dead. Balor, enraged, used all his power to decimate the Tuatha army. Lugh wanted to take revenge. He picked up a rock and called for Balor to face him. The monstrous Cyclops turned to him and charged his eye with enough energy to destroy any god. Lugh, using the humblest weapon, loaded the stone into the sling and waited for the right moment to deliver a perfect shot. He threw the stone with such force that, after piercing Balor's eye, it went through the back of his skull. Upon seeing their dead leader, the Fomorian army panicked and fled to the underwater caves. Brees was arrested and begged for mercy. He promised that he would pass on all his wisdom regarding agricultural knowledge. If they would spare him, the Irish cows would never deny them milk. Lugh was cheered by the people as the great hero of the Second Battle of Moytura and the exterminator of the terrible-eyed Cyclops Balor. With Nuada's death, Lugh became supreme chief of the Tuatha De Danann. Lugh guided his people to prosperity, and a bright reign began in Ireland.